The woman who allegedly shot and killed her husband was given a $50,000 bond in Jackson Municipal Court today. Police say around 11:30 yesterday morning, 30-year-old Rashawn Wallace shot and killed 33-year-old Damian Reed after he allegedly attacked her. It happened on Brook Hollow Drive in Jackson. Wallace is charged with murder.
30-year-old Rashawn Wallace, a licensed practical nurse from Mississippi. On the morning of February 23, 2025, she made a harrowing call after shooting her husband, Damon Reed. The same hands that had spent years tending to patients, providing care and comfort, were now slick with her husband's blood as she fought to keep him alive. Before we dive into the details of this case, take a moment to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Welcome to Murder Watch TV, where we explore the darkest corners of human behavior. This case isn't just another tragic shooting. What makes it especially disturbing is how fast a normal morning spiraled into a crime scene. How does a trained medical professional, someone sworn to care for others, end up taking a life? The answer lies in something deceptively small, a Facebook friend request. Yes, you heard that right. A single social media notification triggered a deadly chain of events, leaving one man dead and his wife facing murder charges with a $50,000 bond. In a world where digital interactions are tightly woven into real-life relationships, this case serves as a chilling reminder of how the virtual world can fuel real-world consequences. That morning, a simple notification popped up on Rashawn's phone, just another friend request. To Damon, however, it meant something much more. What goes through someone's mind in the split second before pulling the trigger? What emotions and choices escalate a relationship conflict into an irreversible tragedy? If you've ever seen a relationship crumble over something seemingly minor, share your thoughts in the comments. Your experiences might help others recognize red flags before it's too late. Damon Reed was 33 years old when his life ended in the very home he shared with Rashawn Wallace. While not much is publicly known about his career or personal interests, those close to him described him as a man who held firm opinions and set clear boundaries in his marriage. Meanwhile, Rashawn Wallace, 30, worked as a licensed practical nurse. Her daily life revolved around patient care, medication management, and assisting those in need. A profession rooted in compassion and crisis management, yet, as we see in this case, professional skills don't always translate into personal relationships. From the outside, their Brook Hollow Drive home appeared ordinary, a quiet residence in a Mississippi neighborhood where people mostly kept to themselves. But behind closed doors, tension simmered. Friends later reported that the couple had been struggling with disagreements, particularly over social media. Damon had growing concerns over Rashawn's increasing online interactions. What most people see as harmless networking, Damon saw as a threat. They seemed fine on the surface, one neighbor recalled. But sometimes, you could hear them arguing about who she was talking to online. He seemed very protective, maybe too protective. Jealousy, control, and digital relationships, issues that plague many modern couples. But for Rashawn and Damon, these tensions were more than just arguments. They were fuel for a fire waiting to ignite. Sunday, February 23, 2025, started like any other. Sunlight filtered through the curtains. Rashawn scrolled through her phone, like millions of people do every morning. And then, the notification. A new friend request. Without much thought, she accepted. In her profession, maintaining connections with former classmates and colleagues was common practice. But Damon saw it differently. At around 9 a.m., he walked into the room, coffee in hand. The familiar ding of Rashawn's phone caught his attention. Maybe it was her reaction, maybe a smile, a quick reply, but something set him off. "Who's that?" he asked, his voice already carrying an edge. "Just someone from work," Rashawn replied. But Damon wasn't satisfied. He demanded to see her phone. She hesitated. That moment of hesitation was all it took. When she finally handed it over, Damon scrolled through her recent activity. He found the friend request. By 9:15 a.m., the conversation had shifted into accusations. "You're always hiding things," Damon snapped. "I see how you're always on your phone, smiling at messages when you think I'm not looking." Rashawn insisted it was nothing inappropriate, just professional networking. But her explanations only fueled his anger. Neighbors later confirmed that by 9:30 a.m., their voices had escalated. By 9:45 a.m., it had reached a breaking point. According to Rashawn's statement, Damon's anger turned to physical intimidation. He stood over her, finger inches from her face, his words sharper than ever. "You think I don't know what you're doing?" he shouted. Feeling cornered, Rashawn made a split-second decision. She moved toward the nightstand drawer, where they kept a firearm for home protection. In nearly 40% of American households, firearms are present, often turning domestic disputes into deadly encounters. Studies show that when guns are accessible in volatile situations, the likelihood of fatal violence skyrockets. At 9:50 a.m., Rashawn pulled out the gun. "Back up," she warned. "Just let me leave the room." But Damon didn't back down. Instead, he stepped closer. At 9:52 a.m., the first shot rang out, a warning shot aimed at the ceiling. The sound should have been a wake-up call, a final chance to de-escalate. Yet, no one called 911. Perhaps neighbors mistook the noise for something else. For a few tense seconds, silence hung in the air. Dust from the ceiling drifted down like falling ash. "Please, just let me go," Rashawn pleaded. "I don't want this to get worse." But Damon kept moving toward her. "You think that scares me?" he sneered. "Give me that before you hurt yourself." And then, at 9:54 a.m., the second shot. This time, it wasn't a warning. The bullet struck Damon's chest. His body collapsed to the floor. In an instant, everything changed. The gun slipped from Rashawn's fingers. Panic took over. She dropped to her knees beside him, her hands pressing against the wound. Blood soaked his shirt, his breathing ragged and fading fast. "Please wake up," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry." At 9:56 a.m., Rashawn called 911. For nearly 10 minutes, she performed CPR, her training momentarily overtaking her panic. But deep down, she knew. By the time paramedics arrived at 10:07 a.m., it was too late. Damon Reed was pronounced dead at the scene. Just 2 hours earlier, a Facebook notification had set off a tragic, irreversible chain of events. Now, Rashawn Wallace was in handcuffs, being led away from the home she had once shared with the man she had just killed. The transformation had happened in seconds, from wife to shooter, from caregiver to suspect. And this was only the beginning. As Rashawn sat in the back of the police cruiser, her hands cuffed tightly behind her back, reality began to sink in. Her mind raced with everything that had just happened. Damon was gone. The man she had built a life with, the man she had loved and fought with, now lay lifeless in their home. She had been trying to save him just minutes ago, performing chest compressions, whispering desperate prayers. But now, there was nothing left to do except wait. The officers didn't speak much as they drove her to the station. The silence was deafening. Every bump in the road made the cold metal of the handcuffs press deeper into her wrists. By the time they arrived at the precinct, the news had already started spreading. A husband shot and killed. A wife charged with murder. In small towns, stories like these travel fast. Inside the interrogation room, Rashawn sat across from two detectives. A single light flickered overhead, casting shadows across her tired face. She was still in the same clothes, her shirt stained with Damon's blood, her hands shaking despite being wiped clean. "Tell us what happened," one of the detectives finally said. Rashawn took a deep breath. And then, she started talking. Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. She paused, trying to gather her thoughts, her fingers twitching against the cold table. The detectives exchanged a glance but didn't rush her. "We were arguing," she continued. "Like we always do. But this time, it got worse." One of the detectives leaned forward. "Worse how?" Rashawn swallowed hard. "Damon was drinking. I could smell it on him as soon as he walked in. He was already angry, and I knew better than to push him when he was like that." She blinked back tears, her eyes staring at the wall behind them, as if replaying the events in her mind. "But I didn't stay quiet. I was tired of it. Tired of walking on eggshells, tired of pretending everything was fine. So I told him." "Told him what?" "That I wanted out." The room fell into silence after those words left her mouth. The detectives let them linger, giving Rashawn space to continue. She took a shaky breath. "When I said I wanted out, he just snapped." Her fingers clenched into fists on the table. His face changed. I saw something in his eyes that I hadn't seen before. Detective Monroe scribbled something down in his notepad. "Did he threaten you?" Rashawn let out a bitter laugh. "Threaten me? Damon didn't use words. He grabbed me. Hard." She rolled up her sleeve, revealing faint bruises along her wrist. "He wasn't going to let me go. Said if I left, I'd regret it." The tension in the room thickened. Detective Alvarez leaned in slightly. "What happened next?" Rashawn stared at the table, her voice barely above a whisper. "I fought back." Detective Monroe exchanged a glance with Alvarez before focusing back on Rashawn. His tone remained steady, but there was a sharpness to his words. "You fought back how?" Rashawn swallowed hard. "I shoved him off me. Told him I wasn't scared of him. That I was done letting him control me." She exhaled sharply. "That only made it worse." Alvarez tapped his pen against his notepad. "What do you mean?" Rashawn's hands trembled slightly as she recounted the moment. "Damon grabbed me by the throat, slammed me against the wall. I couldn't breathe. He kept saying, 'You think you can just leave me? You think you're better than me?'" She let out a hollow chuckle. "Like he was punishing me for even thinking I had a choice." Monroe's jaw tightened. "And then?" Rashawn's eyes darted between the two detectives, her next words carrying a weight that couldn't be ignored. "That's when I knew, I had to do something, or he was going to kill me. I just wanted him to back away," Rashawn repeated several times during the interrogation. "I didn't mean to kill him. I was scared." After consulting with the district attorney's office, authorities officially charged Rashawn Wallace with second-degree murder. Despite her cooperation and clean record, prosecutors argued that the severity of the crime warranted a high bail. The following morning, Rashawn appeared in court for her arraignment. Still visibly shaken and now clad in standard-issue jail attire, she entered a preliminary plea of not guilty. The judge set her bail at $50,000, an amount meant to reflect both the gravity of the charge and her established ties to the community, which lowered her flight risk. News of the incident spread quickly across Mississippi media outlets. Headlines like, "Nurse charged with murdering husband over Facebook friend request," dominated news reports, fueling public fascination. Local TV stations aired the story prominently, sparking debates throughout the community. Reactions were mixed. Some neighbors were stunned that Rashawn, a woman known for her compassionate nature as a nurse, could commit such an act. Others speculated about the hidden tensions in her marriage. "They always seemed like a normal couple," neighbor Dorothy Williams told reporters. "But you never really know what happens behind closed doors." At Rashawn's workplace, disbelief ran deep. "She was always so calm in emergency situations," one coworker stated. "Something must have pushed her to the breaking point." Meanwhile, Rashawn remained in the Hinds County Detention Center, unable to immediately post bail. Investigators continued gathering evidence, interviewing friends, family members, and colleagues to construct a clearer picture of the relationship between Rashawn and Damien in the months leading up to that fatal morning. What was really happening between them? The line between self-defense and excessive force is often razor-thin in domestic disputes. Investigators now faced the challenge of determining where Rashawn Wallace's actions fell on that spectrum. As the case gained public attention, discussions emerged about the psychological patterns behind argument escalation. A minor dispute, like a Facebook friend request, can quickly spiral into a full-blown confrontation, especially when pre-existing tensions exist in a relationship. It typically follows a pattern. A triggering event, in this case, Damien's reaction to the friend request. Verbal confrontation, accusations, defensive responses, and raised voices. Physical proximity shifts, blocking an exit, getting too close, or using body language to intimidate. Escalation to violence. If a weapon is within reach, the situation can turn deadly in an instant. A chilling statistic loomed over the case: the presence of a firearm in a home increases the likelihood of homicide in domestic disputes by 500%. In Rashawn and Damien's case, the gun was kept in their bedroom, the very place where their argument reached its tragic peak. Before the age of social media, relationship boundaries were clearer. Now, something as small as a digital connection can ignite major insecurities. For Damien, the friend request may have represented betrayal or a breach of trust. For Rashawn, his anger could have felt like control and an invasion of her autonomy. Neither may have realized how dangerously the situation was escalating, until it was too late. This case serves as a haunting reminder of how fast emotions can override reason. A morning that began with a simple online notification ended with one person dead and the other facing the weight of the legal system. As the legal process unfolded, Rashawn Wallace remained behind bars at the Hinds County Detention Center, unable to post her $50,000 bond. Her defense team prepared to argue self-defense, insisting that she feared for her safety. Prosecutors, on the other hand, maintained that her actions were an excessive response to a non-lethal threat. If convicted of second-degree murder, Rashawn faced a prison sentence of 20 to 40 years, a grim reality that loomed over her as she awaited trial. Beyond the courtroom, the human cost of this tragedy was undeniable. Damien Reed was more than just a victim in a headline. He was a son, a friend, a colleague, a man whose life had meaning beyond its final moments. Likewise, Rashawn Wallace was more than just the woman behind the gun. She was a caregiver, a nurse, someone who had dedicated her career to saving lives, now standing accused of taking one. This case is a sobering reflection of how quickly a single moment can change everything. Arguments escalate, emotions take control, and in the presence of a firearm, what could have been a temporary conflict becomes permanent. It highlights the dangers of unchecked jealousy, impulsive decisions, and the thin line between love and control in modern relationships. For every case like this that makes headlines, countless others unfold in silence, behind closed doors. Some will de-escalate before reaching the point of violence. Others will end in tragedy. The question remains, how many of these situations could be prevented if people recognized the warning signs before it was too late? If this case resonated with you, hit the like button and subscribe to Murder Watch TV for more real-life crime stories that expose the dark side of human nature. What do you think? Was this self-defense, or was it murder? Let me know in the comments below. Your thoughts could help others recognize the red flags before another tragedy unfolds.